This is a really special video. I'm remaking my first ever video essay, which I really like the premise of, but man, it's just such a train wreck. I wanted to make a channel in the first place really just to make that video, and I fell so in love with it that I kept making more. I recorded it on my earbud microphone, and I got all the footage off of the Switch screen record, making a fake Twitter, tweeting all of the footage, and then saving it at just the worst resolution. It's really clear in that video that I'd never talked in a microphone in my life, and really you could be excused for thinking in that video I had said my first spoken words of my life. So with 500 subscribers and some idea of how to do this, let's remake that video. Cheers to 500 subs, and get excited for a really fun Ace Attorney video within a month. Here's a really important principle in games: the structural difference in how video games and other mediums are allowed to interact with their audience. There exists no other medium that understands its place so well as a medium that a text exists in. Because games have a ludic nature, and as an aside, ludus means play. When we talk about the language of films, the editing, camera work, shot composition, we use the word cinematography. It's the word under which all of those film-specific terms live. For games, we call that ludus. Because games have a ludic nature, there's a lot of ways to interact with the audience that commonly go unexplored. Literature, films, and plays, for example, all have a really distinct way in which you interact with the text. You can read, watch, listen, or put it down. None of those mediums have the ability to reach out and grab what the subject wants or suspects. Video games can transcend this barrier because of that ludus, and Metal Gear Solid specifically has maybe the best use of this idea ever, cutting through the narrative of a game and reaching through the screen and locking onto what the player wants and fears. In the back end of the game, there's a torture sequence where the main character, Snake, is captured and asked to give up the location of his romantic interest, Meryl. You watch some cutscenes for a while and play a little minigame where you're asked to press the circle button repeatedly to avoid dying. All this so far is quite standard. This for me though doesn't feel like how torture feels. It's a test of how quick I can press this button. I'm sitting in my pajamas and Snake is being tortured. Beyond that, it's not even really directly comparable to watching someone in a movie get tortured, because the act of watching a movie you buy in with is watching. You also watch the scene where the love interest kiss, the gang gets together, and the plan goes wrong. In a game, you break from the primary mode of interaction to watch the avatar you controlled get tortured. The narrative and ludic elements in the scene are completely isolated. Snake is being tortured, and I'm watching Snake tortured. That's my experience as the player thus far. And this isn't even really the only torture scene in the Metal Gear Solid series. Watch how the most critically acclaimed game in the series handles torture.
The legacy! The secret fund established by the three great powers during the two...
So here the shock is totally narrative. It's upsetting, but it's standard. Now, back to Metal Gear Solid 1. Right before the game, watch how Ocelot addresses the player and pulls them in with Snake.
You really are. When the pain becomes too great to bear, just give up and your suffering will end. But if you do, the girl's life is mine. Press the circle button repeatedly to regain your strength. When you've had enough, press the select button to submit. When your life reaches 0, the game is over. There are no continues, my friend. Don't even think about using auto fire, or I'll know. Snake, it's been a long time since you saved your game.
Yeah? So what?
If your body can't survive the torture, it'll be game over. You really want to travel down that long road again? Come on, I won't tell. Why don't you just give up?
Suddenly after this development, I'm being tortured. I'm simultaneously far more interested in the outcome and less focused on the narrative because I haven't saved in hours. The shift has doubled back. Now the game is talking to me and to Snake in the mode of engagement that both of us understand. Snake is being tortured and trying not to sell out a girl he's romantically interested in, and I'm being tortured and trying not to have to lose my save data and go back hours. The kick in the teeth isn't that you watch something hard happen to Snake and have to watch him make a hard choice. This isn't Les Mis or Succession or Lord of the Flies. You don't get to just watch idly. You're playing as Solid Snake. You are Solid Snake. If you want to be an action hero, you can tighten up and try to beat this really tough minigame at genuine personal risk, or go fuck yourself and sell her out. And it does matter. Your ending changes based on how well you treat her. I'll let the fact that I got the gay ending with Hal sink in, and you can sort of draw your own conclusions about how well I did at this minigame. Breath of the Wild employs the other side of this in a way that seems to really understand what the player wants instead of what they fear. The Zora Domain was the first place I went to after finishing the plateau, which is heavily plagued by rainfall due to the divine beast Varuta. So begins this quest. Varuta is one of the 4 divine beasts and is an important pillar in the narrative of Breath of the Wild. The Zora people are engaging and their quest is fairly fun, but I wouldn't have been engaged in this quest if it was a standard Zelda quest where you're asked to step in and help because that's what heroes do. Breath of the Wild really isn't a game about helping people. It's about climbing and gliding and finding Korok seeds. And that's why Zora Domain is so clever. To be able to climb it all, you have to stop the rain, which is making surfaces too wet to cling onto. Now your goal of exploring and climbing lines up perfectly with where the text wants you to be. There's no friction between what you want and what the game is asking you to do. You don't have to do your own thing to find the fun. The fun comes about as a result, and kind of importantly, during the mandatory quest, which is way less fun if you just have to do it because you're told to. The same principle applies to Goron City, where you have to further the quest with a divine beast in order to enter the volcano, which of course you want to enter. It's the most interesting feature on the entire map. The thing you already really want to do lines up perfectly with what you're being asked to do, and you wind up having a lot of fun doing the main quest and messing around on the volcano. The way that Breath of the Wild aligns its narrative and ludic identity furthers the game without having to be coercive or changing its fundamental substance. Completing the Varuta quest gives you more access to what the game is about. The incentive doesn't really lie with checking a box, fighting a boss, getting a new power, or completing a quest, even though centrally all of those things do happen. A huge incentive is really just being able to climb and explore this beautiful new area. And in completing this quest, you're given more ways to explore, like with the Zora armor, which lets you scale waterfalls, making these really tall Zora peaks so easy and fun to explore. Video games are still so comparatively young, but major AAA games tend to lean in the direction of mimicking the style and form of movies. Movies may be where you get to make a few choices and can earn trophies, but movies nevertheless. If games were able to take advantage of their seat next to the player, we'd have more Metal Gears and Breath of the Wilds, and a generally more matured and varied medium. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to try to 100% Breath of the Wild. Thank you for watching. I love you.